This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. The Seattle Pilots are the only one-year Major League team in modern baseball history, and today is the first and perhaps the only reunion in the Seattle area. I was 13 in 1969, and I could hardly contain my excitement. After following the Seattle Rainiers and the Seattle Angels, I'd finally get to root for a Major League team in Sick's Stadium. For many baseball fans, it was a time of intense pride and fulfillment. We'd finally made it. The players and the fans questioned, I'm sure, the quality of the ballpark, the high ticket prices, some of the transactions that Marvin Milks made. But there was a special bond that the players and the fans shared together. Today, we have the opportunity to reminisce about the 1969 Pilots. We recall with enthusiasm all the players, whether they appeared in only one game or had only 10 at-bats or became known better perhaps as a rider than a knuckleball pitcher or went to school with Lenny Wilkens. These boys of summer, many of them now grandfathers, they will always be our boys of summer. They are connectors of baseball fans from one generation to another. I suppose my reason for collecting baseball memorabilia is that it helps keep these memories in front of my mental archive. There's a story behind many of the items that I have, and perhaps this keeps me young. If you get a chance to take a look at the display, and I hope you will, some of the unusual pieces that I have in there are a Seattle Pilots hairnet case, because, you know, it rained a lot. It was windy a lot. But that's the only one I've ever seen, and that was intended to be a 1970 promotional item. There's a Seattle Pilots pen in the shape of a cigar. And I've only seen that one. I haven't seen any others. I think it was a sample that they turned down. And then there's a sample general admission ticket. It's stamped sample, and it's ticket number 000000. Some of the favorite pieces that I have here today are a Pilot's batting helmet, not the giveaway ones, but the ones that the players used. An old Woody card. How many of you did the old Woody contest or remember what that was? They'd bring a wood frame to home plate at the Seattle elementary schools, and you'd get a card every year. The card had a picture of the Seattle manager, so depending on who the manager was that year, those pictures changed. The one that's here is from 1969, of course, with Joe Schultz. And then it had 1 through 27 around the borders, the idea being perhaps you could pitch a hypothetical perfect game. If you got 3 balls through the wooden frame before you had 4 balls, then you would have struck out the imaginary batter and you got to pitch to the next one. So you have to go over there and see how I did. And then finally, this usher's jacket, which my friend Stuart said probably would fit in well at a jester's funeral. I've also got a case that has some other Seattle baseball history items before the Pilots. There's an uncut sheet of Seattle Rainiers popcorn cards. Those were issued in the popcorn boxes, the rectangular ones and the megaphones also. And I'm still avidly collecting those today. And then I have a number of items pre-Seattle Rainiers that are in that case. Most often the team was known as the Seattle Indians during those days. So I hope you get a chance to see the memorabilia and enjoy it as much as I enjoy it. I want to thank all the players who traveled here today, Steve Cox and Brad Powers for this phenomenal event and undertaking. We all look forward to the documentary. And to Mike Fuller for keeping the Pilots alive on the web. I hope you've checked out his website. He'll be speaking in a moment. I want to thank Art Thiel for his writing and talking about Seattle baseball history. And then one other special thank you. Jim, it's been really my pleasure to help you with the last edition of Ball 4, the final pitch. Jim Bouton was out here several years ago on a book tour, and I had the privilege of going around with him to some of his signings. And one day, in between signings, we decided to take a trip. We drove down to Rainier and McClellan. And of course, this is where the old ballpark was. We didn't have any illusions that we were going to see Sick's Stadium there. We saw Lowe's Hardware instead. But Jim walked in, and he was on a mission. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm going to find where the pitching rubber was." So he walked around, and there was this paint slab on the floor there. And he said, "This is where the pitching rubber was." And he stood on it. And for a minute, we were in Sick's Stadium. And he said, "I can see home plate. I can see Mount Rainier over right field. I can see the dugouts. And I can see the left field wall. And I can see Joe Schultz looking at me after I sent another ball over that left field wall." So thank you, everybody. And on with the show.